All right. So welcome to tonight's workshop. Is it IBS, SIBO, IMO, or SIFO? So if all these acronyms have got you beat, you're in the right spot. I have people who do know what they are. If you don't worry. I'm going to talk you through it because you might have one, you might have a few, or it might be something else. So today what I'm going to do is dive into gut health and all things IBS, SIBO, IMO, and IFO. So let's get into it. What I will say up front is today, what I share doesn't replace your relationship with a medical provider or a healthcare provider. So what I say today shouldn't be taken as health or medical advice. I don't know your history. I don't know what's going on for you. So this is an education workshop. All right, let's get into it. So what I'm going to share with you today is some of the common symptoms of digestive conditions, such as IBS and SIBO, including IMO and SIFO. So we'll talk and explain what they are in a minute. And by the end of our time together, I hope that you're going to be clear on where, maybe you need to do some further investigation and what the next steps are to take. So can you relate? Bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, urgency, that feeling that you have to rush to the toilet. Or perhaps you've got what we call incomplete evacuation, where you feel like you're just not passing the full stool. Or maybe you've got abdominal pain. And when I talk about constipation and diarrhea, you may have one or the other, or you may have both in interchange. I see it often. What about these ones? Do you have belching? Do you have nausea? Do you have reflux? Does your poo float? I want your poo to sink. I want you to be pooing 20 centimeters a day of brown sausage-like poo, and I want it to sink. If it's floating, we call it you've got too much steatocrit in your stool, which means there's too much fat and you're not absorbing it. What about these ones? Leaky gut symptoms, so rosacea, acne, eczema, skin rashes, food allergies. The list of leaky gut symptoms goes much broader than that, and I am including them in some of the other lists I've put up tonight. But these are ones which often people don't realise. They say, no, I don't have leaky gut. There's nothing wrong with my gut. I can pick often someone who's got leaky gut, especially with that rosacea. What about these ones? Restless legs, urinary frequency, bladder pain, low B12, low iron, brain fog. So if you're starting to tick off a few of these, then, this talk is absolutely for you. You're going to pick up some, I'm hoping, some real pearls tonight. What about these ones? You have worse symptoms with prebiotics or probiotics, maybe even with fiber. I have a lot of people who come to me who are eating really, really healthy, but what they're eating is causing them problems, and fiber is often one of those. Xylitol and other sugar alcohols, if they're making you worse, they're great clues. What about this one? You started to get gut issues after an episode of food poisoning. So you had some aspect of gastroenteritis, some exposure. It might have been traveling, it might have been at home in our country, doesn't matter where. But if you can pin back your gut issues to a point where you had food poisoning, then that's also a great clue. It's not saying you've got to tick off all of these. It's saying, do you have a few? What about if you take antibiotics? So if you take antibiotics for, an unrelated problem, a toe infection or something, and your gut gets better, that can also be a sign and a really good hint. We're getting to the end of my list. What about this one? If you have celiac disease. So if you have celiac disease, but you don't eat gluten and you still got gut issues, then that's another hint. Or if you have IBD, so bowel disease, and you have a flare or are having flares often we call it, often it's SIBO in there, but we call it IBS within the IBD. So if you've ticked off a few of these, then like I said, you're in the right place. It's estimated about 1 in 10, a bit more, have irritable bowel syndrome. So that's what IBS is, where the bowel lining becomes irritated. And it's thought that it's about 80%, we're thinking. I just saw a number the other day that said it's closer to 80% of these people have what we call small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, called SIBO. And so I'm going to explain exactly what this is and how it all works in a moment. But before I get to that, this is from a medical journal, World Gastroenterology, and I've pulled it up here because I thought it was really interesting that if we look at SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome, the symptoms are almost exactly the same. So I thought I'd share that with you because when I saw that, I went, wow, no wonder many people are trying many things and not getting to the bottom of what's going on in their gut. So what is IBS? What is irritable bowel syndrome? So like I said, it's where the lining of the bowel becomes irritated. And the common triggers for IBS foods, really, really significant one is stress, infections, like I said, food poisoning, and for some people, it's some medicines. And what I will say about IBS is it can be very tricky to manage because often the food triggers are quite different from person to person. So if you're watching this and you say, yes, I've got IBS, I've tried low FODMAP and it didn't work, or it worked a little bit but didn't get rid of it, then maybe, just maybe, you got SIBO. So 80% of people who have IBS have SIBO. So what is SIBO? So it is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So what it is where you've got an abnormal number of bacteria in the small intestine. And they're not pathogens. They're what we call pathobionts that actually ferment starches and gases into starches and fibers into gases. And those gases are what cause a lot of the symptoms. They cause the inflammation in the lining of the small intestine, which damage the villi. And when the villi becomes damaged, you can't absorb your B12 and your iron. So you can see how some of the things start to link up. You get bloating. Some of them cause a lot of constipation, which I'll share in a moment, and some of them cause a lot of diarrhea. And like I said, and it says just here again, actually I was just talking, not reading, it's the gases that these pathobionts create that cause the symptoms and cause the problems in these people. So there are different types of SIBOs. So what I typically work with people who have tried a lot of things. So they've seen naturopaths, they've seen functional doctors, they've seen nutritionists, dietitians, you name it. A lot of people have tried to fix their gut issues on their own, but the fact is it's very, very difficult. It's very challenging if you don't have the data, if you don't know exactly what's going on in there. And you kind of get a sense from this that there are so many different aspects to SIBO. So there's IBS-C, which is IBS constipation. And that's what we call IMO. So it's a methanogen overgrowth. And, it's about 1 in 3 people with SIBO have this. IBS-D, so that's IBS diarrhea, and about 40% of people have that. IBS-M, so that's where people have alternating constipation and diarrhea. So it might not be full-on diarrhea, but it might be every couple of days softer stools, and then every couple of days harder type pellets. They're never having the 20 centimetre sausage that I spoke about. And then the other one that often isn't spoken about, but is very important, and that's highly on my radar, is SIFO. So that's where we have a fungus overgrowth in the small intestine. I'm just going to pause there if there are any questions. If anyone's got any questions, you can type them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself if you like. And as I'm talking, if you've got questions, feel free to type them in the chat as well, and I will answer them as we go. So look, there's lots of associated conditions. So I'm a science-based functional medicine nutritionist. So I love data. I love scientific journals. PMID, what that means is if you're interested in learning about any of the research around these associated conditions, you type that in to Google Scholar, and it will pull up for you the relative, the actual article. And if you can't get a copy of it, sometimes they're locked, but because I'm studying my master's, I can get you a copy. So if there's any of these that you want a copy of, let me know. But you can see from this, and the ones that are underlined, there's very strong evidence that SIBO is associated with these conditions. And people often laugh at me when I ask them, do they have restless legs at night? They're like, what on earth has that got to do with it? But the studies are showing that there is most certainly a strong correlation there. So if you're seeing some of these conditions on the list and you go, well, I've got that, or I've got a few of these, and I've got gut issues, maybe, just maybe, you do have SIBO as well. So when to see the doctor? Most certainly with gut and digestion, we need to be taking it seriously. So if you ever notice that there's blood in your poo, if you're ever having significant or unexplained, unintentional weight loss, see the doctor. Fever, and if your symptoms are severe and if you're having severe pain, you do need to see the doctor. Sometimes we do need to get, scans and blood tests and checks, and they can also do a physical check to see that there's no organs or things that are impacting what's going on. So I thought I must say that up front. So a little bit about me. I suppose you may or may not know me. I know a few faces here. I am university qualified functional medicine nutritionist, and I have a very special interest in gut health, epigenetics, and autoimmune conditions. And that comes from my journey. It comes from the journey of my family. And yeah, I continue to learn every day. I'm learning more and more. And I was just on a lecture series the other day about inflammation and autoimmune, and I joined it because I've got this special interest, as you know, as I've just said, but it was fascinating because they delved into a level even deeper around gut dysbiosis and the impact that has on inflammation, the impact that has on autoimmune, and the interplay between those things and stress, and how that really impacts your T cells. Because when we talk about inflammation and things that cascade going on in the body when people do have autoimmune conditions, it's the T cells that are having the party. So it was very interesting, and it was really quite made me realize that all of my own personal research that I've been doing is most certainly on the right track, that gut health is the center of a lot of our optimal health. So I've supported hundreds of people around the world, mainly working in Australia and America, but I have had other clients from other countries, and not only supporting them regaining the gut health, but their overall health and their energy and their confidence. They feel better so they can show up and do more and be more, which is amazing. I'm the founder of the Healthy Gut Club. I've got lots of different programs. I also work with people one-on-one, and I am SIBO doctor approved, which is really important. If you are seeking out someone to help you with your gut, you want to be going with someone who really does understand what the latest science is, and to have a protocol which isn't just guesswork, that it's really based on what's happening for you and what the latest science is saying. So you can go onto SIBO Doctor and Google to find someone. Most people who have done all the qualifications and the studies are on there. So you're in the right place. Imagine regaining your gut health, not having to worry about what to wear, or for some people, it's where the closest toilet is. having stable mood and energy levels through the day, and finally learning what's going on in there and having a bio-individual protocol developed just for you to address your root causes. So, not relying on Google, not relying on a friend, having something that is based on what is most important for your body. So what I thought it would be really helpful is to just give you a really high-level summary of how digestion works, because I know every time I talk to this, everyone takes away something different, and it makes me realize that our high school biology or whatever we learned all those years ago, we forget about. And it actually is really, really important that you understand what's going on in your body, especially when you're working with someone like me, because I am thinking in all the different aspects of your digestion. So your digestion actually starts in your brain. It's in your pituitary gland, which is kind of behind your eyes. And so when you're about to eat or drink, it's really important that you're thinking about your food. It creates enzymes in your mouth. It helps you salivate. It's the signaling then to your body that food is coming. Let's get ready to digest and absorb. And like it says here, it starts at your brain, quickly goes to your mouth and then ends at your anus. And so the GI tract, in this image, it kind of gives you an idea of all the organs. But the big ones are your esophagus, your stomach. The food goes to the stomach first. The stomach is like the food processor, like the blender. It whizzes everything up. And then the chyme, it's called, the food that we break down, the chyme goes to the small intestine, and that's where we're meant to be absorbing a lot of our nutrients. So that's often a clue. Like I said earlier, low B12, low iron, straight away I go, what's going on in the small intestine? What happens then is the waste goes to the large colon. And look, in the large colon, we do produce things like short chain fatty acids from that waste, which is really powerful for our health. And we do create some of our own vitamins and all sorts of things going in there, which is just amazing. And I suppose what we're trying to aim for is the bacteria that's in the large colon there's a good balance of good bacteria. The opportunistic or nasty bugs are kept in check. They're always going to be there, but we've got to make sure that they don't get overgrown. And we've got to make sure that there's no bacteria floating backwards up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse up here. So going from the green colon backwards up to the small intestine, there's a little valve here called the ileocecal valve, which basically is really clever. It kind of turns on, opens and closes to let the waste out of the small intestine. And it's meant to be a one-way street, but sometimes due to car accidents, medications, all sorts of things, that ileocecal valve becomes damaged. And what we find is the contents end up going retrograde and they go backwards, which then causes that SIBO problem. As I've said here, digestion, it's not only what we eat. So most certainly I work with people on optimizing what they're putting in their mouth, what they're drinking, those kinds of things. But it's also, are you absorbing? So do you have enough enzymes in your mouth? Are you chewing until it's like baby food, or are you swallowing big chunks? If you're swallowing big chunks, your body is you're not utilizing the enzymes in your mouth, the amylase and lipase. And what we've got to do is really get that going. So then when it gets to the stomach and it's mixed up with your stomach acid, and then it gets down to the small intestine and you get the pancreatic enzymes going, you're able to better absorb your nutrients because we need them. We need them. We need fat, fiber, protein to create ATP, to create energy. And everything you put in your mouth, what you drink, turns basically you into human flesh. which is just gross if you really think about it. Gross or amazing, probably more amazing. And when the lining of the gut actually regenerates every 5 days, which is just phenomenal. So what you're eating is creating those cells, that tissue. So the brain, it's called the cephalic phase. When we think about, look at, smell, or touch food. And like I said, I can't stress enough how important this is. It's really important that you're not eating when you're fully stressed and you're in fight or flight. I don't want you eating when you're walking. Your body has no idea what you're doing if you're eating and walking. I want you to be as calm as possible. If you're in a stressful environment or you're at work, or just try to get yourself to have some deep breaths and really get those digestive juices going. I already spoke to this. Food goes in the mouth, chew, 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 goes down the esophagus, which is, basically your throat. You don't even realize it, right? The body is so amazing. It's got these automatic contractions and these little sphincters that let the food in and out, which is just incredible. Like I said, the stomach, it's where there's that food processor, and then it goes to the small intestine, and the small intestine's massive. It's like 7 meters long, and it is long, and it's got 3 sections on purpose. So the duodenum is the first bit, and that's where you do get bile from your gallbladder, and the liver produces the bile, and it gets sent to the gallbladder, and then it stays in the gallbladder until fats into the small intestine, and there's that signaling then to release the bile. If you don't have a gallbladder, then we need to talk. That's, an easy thing that we can start to work on for you. Because if you don't have a gallbladder, you'll be struggling big time to break down fats. And then the other 2 elements of the small intestine is the duodenum and the ileum. And this is where, like I said, a lot of those absorption challenges for people can be. So if you do have celiac disease, if you do have IBD, if you do have low mineral and vitamin status, we need to have a look in the small intestine and see what's going on. The pancreas, so I've put this one in green just because it's a supportive part of your digestion. So it makes the enzymes, it's released. Like I said, it helps break down your food. And one thing that you might not know is it also makes hormones. So it also makes insulin that's excreted into your blood. Now, your liver's on your right side, under your ribs, big organ, beautiful organ. I want you to look after that organ. So your liver basically detoxes everything. So it detoxes hormones, it detoxes things that you're eating, and usually, it's a 2-phase cycle. So what we've got to make sure is we're looking after this absolutely beautiful organ. So if you're not doing an annual detox, you can do it a couple of times a year. If you're not really taking good care of it and giving it a rest for a couple of times a year, then you probably should. I've got a beautiful detox program. I run it 4 times a year. I used to run it twice a season, and I used to do it 8 times a year. It was a bit much. So now I'm doing it 4 times a year, and I do it 4 times a year. I've just done it for winter, and it's a fantastic way to just give that beautiful organ, your liver, a rest. And then what happens is people start to regain their health, because not only are they taking out all the junk and bringing in foods which are really anti-inflammatory, but also what we're doing is feeding the good bugs, supporting and feeding the good bacteria, and minimizing the bad bugs as well. So that's just a side note. If you haven't done a detox program, it's not scary. It can be lots of fun. So we got to have our liver working really well for us. So if you've got PMS problems, if you've got menopause issues, then most certainly we need to talk, because that means that there is some strain potentially in your phase 2 liver detox. I see it a lot, particularly with women with endo, with sore breasts, with PMS, those kinds of things. Like I said, if you don't have a gallbladder, we definitely do need to have a conversation, because the gallbladder is really important. Basically, it acts like dishwashing liquid to break down your fats so you can absorb them. So if you don't have a gallbladder and you're not optimizing your digestion, you're at risk of being malnourished for your fat-soluble vitamins, which are A, D, E, and K. And also, if you are low in vitamin D, which many people are, because that's the main one that they test on bloods, then we start to go, right, what's going on? What's going on with the liver? What's going on with the gallbladder? So that can be another line of thought that you might want to take if you do have low vitamin D consistently. Of course, if you're not getting out in the sun, that's going to impact you. But we do get vitamin D in our food. So, some of the low numbers I see, it's often digestion related and gallbladder, liver related. And like I said, the large colon processes waste from that liquid state to make it into a big 20 centimeter poo, like I said. And it's an average of 36 hours transit time to get through that 2 meters of your colon. And this is why you may or may not have heard that red meat is now something that we should be eating maybe once a week, because it takes such a long time to break down and be processed, and the risk of bowel cancer increases. So if you're not up on that, if you want some information on that, let me know, because that's something I'm very interested in. So way to test this is have some corn, don't chew it. Have some sesame seeds, don't chew them, with some water. Set your clock and then wait to see how long it takes to come through your poo. So if it's, a couple of days, if it's around that 36 hours, and you go, okay, that's good. If it's way longer and you're going, wow, it's been a week and I'm still waiting, we've got a problem. If it's really quick, we've also got a problem, because if it's too long, it means basically your body's reabsorbing your toxins because you're not passing your stool. So if your stool is not able to be passed, your body has to reabsorb all the toxins. It's got to go through filtration again. It's not great. If your transit time is really quick, you're not absorbing your nutrients. So we've got to stop to go, okay, well, what's going on there for you? Like I said a moment ago, short chain fatty acids are made in the large colon, very, very powerful for your health. We can feed them with, a simple way to feed your short chain fatty acids are to have a banana with the green on it. So don't have a banana that's black with lots of black spots. When you're buying your bananas, buy them so you plan to eat them with a bit of green. Takes a bit of getting used to. They're almost like a tiny bit chalky if you don't get them perfect. But what they do is they create what's called resistant starch, or they are a resistant starch. So they avoid absorption. And then when they get to the large colon or your bowel, that's where they feed these short chain fatty acids. So they're super, super powerful food. So what else have we got? The rectum, 20 centimeters. And this is where we know. We go, oh, gosh, bin's full, got to poo. So that's why if you struggle with constipation, having a squatty potty or a stool, having your knees higher than your hips will help, because what that's going to do is that's going to work on your anal sphincters. That's going to help relax your rectum and your colon, and then help you have a proper evacuation. So if that's something you haven't tried, I'd give it a go. And then of course you've got the anus, and if you've had hemorrhoids and things like that, then you well know how important the anus is to keep that, keep keep that condition at bay if you do have hemorrhoids. And again, this whole area is supported by your pelvic floor. So often if your pelvic floor is too strong and locked on, I see it a lot with athletes who are like marathon runners, and it's like strong pelvic floor, that can impact and definitely not cause constipation, but it can impact emptying of the bowel. So, just if that's part of the puzzle, either I can help work with you to find a good physio or Pilates instructor, or if you think, oh yeah, that could be me, maybe it's worth getting some assessment by a proper physio. Not a proper one, but what am I saying? One who's trained in pelvic floor. You really want to make sure that they've got a good qualification in pelvic floor, or a Pilates instructor. And we've got the two sphincters. So basically, you know how sometimes you go, oh, is that gas or is that wind, or is it a poop? Well, you got the two sphincters. So the brain and the sphincters work together, and they say, what's solid, what's gas, and they hopefully keep that signal going so you don't have an accident. So again, I'm just going to pause there. Are there any questions before I move on? Was that helpful? It's complex. It's amazing. It's such a, our body is so amazing to think this is all going on. And for many of us, we feel nothing. We don't even know what's going on. So what is functional medicine and functional medicine nutrition? So what I do is I work with people to say, okay, what's the non-negotiables in their food and their lifestyle choices? So I don't work with people who are eating McDonald's all the time and, those kinds of things. They're non-negotiables. They've got to go. If you want to regain your health, it's saying, okay, well, how can we use food as medicine? How can we use some what we call functional foods which have got some really good science around them to help you regain your health. So depending on what's going on for you, how can we utilize these foods? And like I said, we've got to sometimes take out others for a period of time while it gives your body that ability to rest and heal. Functional medicine nutrition is also about supporting you from going from deficiency to sufficiency. So that's not only in what you're eating and drinking, but it's also maximizing that absorption. So, that saying, you are what you eat. Well, you're not. You are what you digest. You are what you absorb, is more like it. And what functional medicine nutrition also is dismantling dysfunction. So it's taking a look to go, right, you've got all these systems in your body, for example, the restless legs. So the neurological aspect and the gastrointestinal aspect, they're two different systems, but saying, okay, what's going on in the different systems of your body and how could they be interrelated? They may not, but a lot of time they are. And that's where we start looking at what are some of the root causes and what are some of the triggers. And it may be things around gut health, nutrition, hydration, toxins, environment, hormones. Stress is a very big one. And of course, epigenetics and genetics. Your gut, it impacts a lot of your health. 80% of your immune system is in the lining of your gut. It's called the GALT, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. When I found that out, I was like, why is no one talking about this? Why has no one told me this? 80% is a big number. So we've got to look after our gut. If you've had COVID, your gut's going to be worn down. I'm seeing it every single day. I saw it 3 times today where people, they're just getting sick all the time. Their gut's not up to scratch. Look at the gut and the mucosal lining. It's called the secretory IgA through the floor. So we've got to stop to go, okay, yes, actually, all health does begin in the gut. That's what Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago, who is said to be the first ever, what would we call him? Health professional, doctor. I don't know what the term is. So the causes. So I seem to be talking a lot about SIBO, and the reason because IBS and SIBO, like I said right at the beginning, they're often one and the same. So, when I say SIBO, it can also be inferring IBS, IMO, and SIFO, all of those. So impaired motility. So I'm not going to talk to every single point here, but what we're saying here is this is called MMC, is the migrating motor complex. And so we've got this beautiful wave action that goes on with our digestion, and it's about every 90 minutes to 3 hours. So if you're eating all day long and snacking, your body hasn't got that opportunity for that migrating motor complex to work properly. And if you've got little kids and they're just snacking all day, we've got to stop. We've got to have set meals and give your body that space, 1 to 2 hours at least break, where that migrating motor complex, it's like a broom that's coming along and cleaning up and making sure everything's in order. Got to make sure that's optimized. Now, for some people, there's damage to it, and there's damage because of an autoimmune condition. There's damage because of an accident, like a car accident, a brain injury, roller coasters. I had a client recently who was a roller coaster who set him off. It might be due to thyroid conditions, diabetes, mold, all sorts of things. So motility is a big one. So when I work with people with SIBO, I'm always wondering, I'm always thinking, I'm always questioning what's caused it, because we can get rid of the symptoms and we can often fix it, but it's about relapse. Is it going to come back? And how long is it till it comes back? And for some people, it is a once a year thing. So, how I spoke about my detox. For some people with SIBO, it is a once a year. We've got to go in and do the SIBO protocol, particularly if you've got things like dysautonomia, particularly Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS, brain injury, hypothyroidism, potentially, diabetes. This might be something that you've got to look at every year. I've got a client at the moment who has not got an ileocecal valve. It was removed. So remember how I was talking about, so the bacteria doesn't go retrograde from the small intestine to the large colon. That's gone because he had such severe Crohn's, they had to cut out the terminal ileum. And so basically waste and the bacteria just kind of doing a dance. But, for him even, doing the protocol has helped clear things out. And he said the other day, he's like, I'm feeling so much better, the best I've felt in 20 years. So, we can do things. We absolutely can do things. And for some people, it's, they don't have to worry about this. But for many of my clients, especially because I see really complex clients, it is something that we've got to consider and think about and plan for. It might be impaired digestion. So it might be chronic state of stress, really sets things off. You heard me talk about before the secretory IgA, so where the mucosal lining, that 80% of our immune system in the gut, wears right down. It might be because you don't have enough enzymes. It might be because there's not adequate bile flow. It might be because you don't have a gallbladder. It might be because your liver's under strain, or you've got liver disease or low stomach acid, those kinds of things. Could be from medications. And it could be because, like I said before, impaired flow. So if there's certain things like endometriosis, if there's abdominal adhesions, if you've had surgery and you've never been right since that surgery, I hear that all the time, something happened, something's moved, and as a result, maybe, you've got this bacteria where it shouldn't be. So they're the main causes that we see. I'll just pause, see if there's any questions. Feel free to type them in the chat if there are, or unmute yourself. I'll keep moving. So this is an example report. So to do a SIBO test, what we're doing is you have to eat certain foods the day before, then you take a breath test Then you drink a substrate, which is usually glucose or lactulose, and then you test your breath, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 10 times over 20 minutes. So you do a test every 20 minutes. And what we're looking for is to see if what you drank created gas. So if you remembered what I said earlier, it's because there's gas in the small intestine that shouldn't be there. If they're there, they'll have a party with the glucose or the lactulose. They'll create gas. Gas goes to the lungs. You breathe out the gas. And then what we see over, we're really looking to about that 100-minute mark, because after 100 minutes, the contents go from the small intestine to the large colon. Is there a rise in hydrogen and methane, and what about them together? So if there's a rise in hydrogen of more than 20 parts per million, so you can see here the person went 1, 3, 8, 22, bang. So they have gone up 21 points, and then they went to 76, and then they went to 89. So they've actually gone up in 100 minutes, 88. Massive. That's massive. And you can see here, huge. So definitely positive for hydrogen, SIBO. Then we look at methane. So methane, we're looking for a rise of 12 parts per million, 29, 20. Oh, we went down. Oh, and then we went up. So most certainly also methane, and then combined. So combined, we're looking for a rise of about 15 parts per million. So this person most certainly has SIBO. There's no question about it. The trick becomes working through, and this is where you just can't Google this stuff, right? You need a practitioner who knows what they're talking about, because to each hydrogen atom, there's 4 methane atoms connected, attached. So what we've got to be really careful around is how we treat. So for this person, we'd be treating combination. For some people, we just treat methane. For some people, we just treat hydrogen. The treatments are different. The foods are the same. And I will say for this gentleman, 88, we can clear about 20 parts per million every 6 weeks. So he is going to be with me for a couple of months, a good, I'd say 6 to 12 months. But he will start feeling, I think, much better within, I'd say 2 to 4 weeks. He'll start to feel much better. This is a sample. This isn't a real client. Otherwise, I would be able to tell you exactly how they felt. So that's what the test is. So that's where you can get the data. So remember, this is small intestine, where we have the pathobionts where they shouldn't be. So the hydrogen and the methane shouldn't be there in the big numbers. If I think it's more of a large colon thing going on, so in your large intestine, what we do is a poo test. So the poo test, it's called a GI map, and it goes to the US, where we start to unpack, okay, are there any pathogens? What's going on with, this is that secretory IgA I spoke about. Remember I said that 80% of the immune system? This person's is amazing. I never see a number like that. But this gives me a really good idea as to what's going on in there. Floating poo, steatocrit. This person probably poo would float. They got 6. I want it to say nothing. I want it to say DL. Below detectable limits. Their elastase is low, 388, so I want it above 750. How old is this person? 81. Yeah, I definitely want it above 750. So we've got to work on that. We've got to work on their digestion, and they're going to feel so good within, I reckon, 4 weeks if we just, do some really simple things just in this space alone. This is usually phase 1. When I'm working with people, is addressing any of the major pathogens and optimizing their digestion. Beta-glucuronidase, so this is an enzyme. If you ever see anything with ACE on the end, it means enzyme. Medical terminology is actually it becomes quite simple when you understand it. Same with itis. Anything with itis means inflammation. It's Latin. So beta-glucuronidase is an enzyme in the gut, And what it is like, it's like a naughty kid that sits under the Christmas tree and unwraps all the presents. So you're getting the toxins through your phase 2 liver detox, pushed out through the bile into the gut, ready to be pooed out, basically. So it's ready to be shot out, mixed up into the stool, and basically pooped out. What the beta-glucuronidase does, it says, oh, great, toxins, let's undo them. Let's undo all the presents. And then what happens is you have to reabsorb them and you have to detoxify them again. So with people who have endo, people who have PMS, people who have very bad breast tenderness, and all sorts of things regarding hormonal aspects, I see this really high. So that's something that we've got to work on. If there's blood, obviously we've got to work on what's going on there. Anti-gliadin, that's telling us, is there an immune reaction to gliadin, which is protein in wheat? So you heard of gluten, this is gliadin. This person's fine, 15's fine. Calprotectin, again, is inflammation in the lining of the bowel. It's where white blood cells get in. So people who have bowel disease, IBD, usually have very significant calprotectin numbers. This one's fine. And zonulin. So you may have heard a leaky gut or intestinal permeability. This person has it big time. So I want this number around or below 50. Below 50 or 70, this person's got really quite significant leaky gut. So we've got to get that sorted, because leaky gut, so what zonulin is, like our gut, it's not, it's got to be able to pass nutrients through the gut lining. What zonulin does is it increases. So think of it like fishnet stockings. So we've got to get that zonulin down, because some of the things in your gastrointestinal system, we want to be pooping them out. We definitely do not want them getting into your bloodstream. So if you've got autoimmune conditions, if you've got thyroid conditions, if you've got, poor health generally, we've got to look at to see what's going on with that zonulin. So then what this test is also really good for is looks at Helicobacter. What's the normal bacteria? Do you have the right amount of the good bugs? I want you to have the good bugs. And then we look at the opportunistic bugs. Where are you at? Do you have a lot of ones which are causing you problems? Some of these cause toxins, which it's not actually the bacteria themselves that are the problem. It's the lipopolysaccharides and the toxins they produce that cause you problems. And most certainly if you've got autoimmune conditions, this is a very important section where we say, okay, well, what bacteria are you carrying and what numbers? And let's have the goal of reducing them. So these bacteria are autoimmune instigating and sustaining. So we definitely want to keep those in check. And then we also check for things like fungi and yeast. I find with SIBO and SIFO, this fungus in the small intestine, they don't often come up here. So that's where we really got to use our brain and join the dots a bit. If there's any questions, just please type them in the chat. So why are you here? So it's because you want to learn what's going on in there and to regain your gut health. I know that. And I hope tonight I've been able to share some of the common symptoms of digestive conditions, and that you've had some further insight into your own gut health and some of the steps that you need to take. So if you do need support, obviously you can keep doing what you're doing, or if you want to know more about a functional medicine nutrition approach, if you're ready to take action, if you do want to start to go, you know what is going on in there? I do want to know, want to try a new approach, and you are able to be persistent and consistent over the next couple of months. And what I'll say to that is with every client say, do you want to go mild, medium or hot? Now, some clients I don't need to say that because they're very clear in their direction and I know what they want. But for some, if they're a bit on the fence, I'll say, look, you don't have to do the full-on gold standard down here. We can do some small things that are going to get you some wins. And often people, if they're doing small things over a period of time, they feel better, they can show up, they can do more, they can be more, and which is great. So it's just a matter of you being clear with me on where you're at. So if this is you, this is how to get started. So to take a functional medicine nutrition approach. So you book an appointment. So you can do that on my website if you want a virtual appointment. If you want to see me face-to-face, I have a clinic on a Friday at the World of Wellbeing at Woden in Canberra, or at Shenzhen Wellness on a Wednesday at Kingston. Or the other days I see people online via Zoom. There will be intake forms. So, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I need to learn from you what your health history is. So there's 2 forms I need you to read and sign, and there's a client intake form, which you can put as much information in there as you want or as little. What it's going to do is get me thinking before you and I meet, so I can start to put some of the dots together and start to come up with some questions on what I can ask you. If you've done any testing, please send it to me. So if you've got previous SIBO tests or gut tests or metabolic tests or blood tests or whatever tests, I really like to see them. And the platform that I use a secure platform called Practice Better. Everything is in there. So you can upload all of your results. It's all secure. It's all locked down. And that way I get to, again, have a bit of a look and a think before we meet. I'll go really deep dive into your health and family history. And like I said earlier, it's about starting to go, okay, what's going on? What are some of the systems of the body that are potentially being impacted? And it's from there where I'll start to join the dots. I'll determine if there's any testing that's appropriate and applicable. I'll share with you the costs, how to do it, the preparation for those tests, how long the results take to come back. And, I do often have clients who say, well, what if the test results showed me I was positive in this, or I did have this? Can we use a bit of a guesswork approach to save money? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, we can. If financial restraints are an issue, then we can most certainly do that. But the thing is, if you've been struggling for a very long time, and a lot of my clients have been struggling for 20, 30, 40 years, then a test, don't guess approach may save you time, may save you throwing mud at the wall and hoping it sticks. If you've had it for a very long time. If you've had some gut issues which have been shorter, like 1 or 2 years, and we can really kind of nail down what's going on in there, you may not need the testing at all. So again, we can talk about that. And then what I do is you leave that appointment, you're very clear on what phase 1 of your protocol is. So you'll get either, I've got it here actually, nutrition advice, including recipes, lifestyle suggestions, things that, can help build your health and your resilience up over the, it's usually 4 to 6 weeks is phase 1. If there's supplements, so I can get you scripts for very high quality practitioner-based supplements, but it's about me, I think, also being really clear on you on why I'm asking you to do these things, because, just taking things because is not a good reason. You've got to be really clear as to why. And same with the foods. So for me, asking you to eat certain foods, not eat certain foods, it's important that you know why. In phase 1, if you are doing the testing, then you will send off the tests and, do either the breath test or the poo test. You might do a hair test. You might do urine tests. You might go back to your GP for some blood work. May look like a combination of all of those. And like I said, it's usually around 4 to 6 weeks. And usually in that first or the second appointment where we kick off for phase 2, people tell me all the great things. So in 4 to 6 weeks, it's like I go through with you. I say, right, what are the wins? And I'm always thrilled to hear how people can regain their health in relatively quick, short time, or start to. And it's optional. So if you really like education, if you really like what I spoke through around digestion and what it all means, then I do have the Healthy Gut Club. So that's a monthly subscription where you can join and you get a workshop, you get recipes, you get to come to one of my live events, which is like this, but it's with my members once a month. So if that's something that's of interest to you, you can add that on as well. So that's it. So to get started, it's as simple as that. You can either just drop me a message or go online and book an appointment. And from there, what we can do is really start to delve in as to what's going on in your gut. So what I'll do is I'll leave it there. And if you've got any questions, just reach out. If you're not sure if this is right for you, you can always book a free discovery call with me as well. All right. Speak to you soon. Bye.